Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here, and today I am back again with another video. Today's video is going to be discussing Nikola Vucevic, who, if you didn't know, is having a really good season, arguably his best season that he's ever had in the NBA thus far. And he is going to be a free agent in the upcoming off season. His contract is expiring. He will likely not return to the Magic just because they have a lot of young front court players, such as Aaron Gordon and Mo Bamba, who they likely are going to want to start them at both the power forward and the center spot. And that really doesn't leave much space for Nikola Vucevic to play with them kind of taking over more, especially Mo Bamba, because this year Nikola Vucevic is playing a decent amount. He's playing 31 minutes a game, and then I think Mo Bamba's playing roughly like 15 minutes a game just as his backup. But they really want Mo Bamba to kind of be the star player, and they're hoping that he can be sort of like the next Rudy Gay, I think, so to speak. So that being said, Nikola Vucevic will likely be moving on to another team, and because he's having his career year right before he leaves, he's likely going to command a salary, I would guess probably about $20 million per year, just because he's playing so well. You know, maybe a little bit less if he's reasonable, but I think 20 million is about his value. So I am going to go through some potential destinations that I think he could end up at, and just for clarification, sort of the salary that I'm going to assign to him on each of these teams is $20 million. So when I'm looking at like cap space and availability for different teams to be able to sign him, I'm looking at like right around like $20 million to be able to get him onto the team. So that being said, let's start off with some of the teams we got here. The first one I'm going to go through is the Dallas Mavericks, who I think would be a very interesting team with him. So they have DeAndre Jordan coming off the books. He's making 22.9 million, so basically 23 million this year. They also have Wesley Matthews coming off the books, who's making 18.6 million. So combined, they have roughly, let's see here, 19 plus 23, that's 42 million. So they're going to have plenty of room to sign some people. And then also, it's presumed that this could be like Dirk's last season with them, so that's another 5 million. So that's 47 million for them to go after somebody. So if they don't re-sign DeAndre Jordan, I could definitely see them going after Vucevic, a guy who is having a great year. Let's just go over his stats real quick, just so you know what any team would be getting if they acquired him. Vucevic this year is averaging 20 points a game, 12 rebounds a game, 4 assists a game, 1 steal and 1 block a game. He is shooting 52% from the field and 38% from three. He's taking three-point attempts a game, so it's not like he's shooting one or two the whole season, and that's what percentage he's at. He's actually shooting them pretty frequently in game and shooting 38%, which is a really great percentage, and then 52% from the field, which is tied for his career high, so that's great as well. Um, so you're getting a guy who can score 20 and 12. I think he would fit into Dallas nicely in that he can space the floor, and he, I think, will work with Doncic well in that he creates space for Doncic to drive and kick. But he can also post up too. He's sort of like what you would get if you combined like Brook Lopez and Al Jefferson. As very different as those guys seem, that's sort of what I would say this incarnation of Nikola Vucevic is. A guy who can be a threat from deep, but also punish you down low with post-up moves and be a threat in the paint as well. So I think he would fit in well with Dallas. Let's say that they sign him. Your starting lineup then would probably look something like, assuming they keep Dennis Smith Jr., which they may not, but your starting lineup would look like Vucevic at the 5, Dwight Powell at the power forward, Harrison Barnes at small forward, probably Luka at shooting guard, and then Dennis Smith Jr. at point guard, with off the bench your main guys being like Barea and really no one else, honestly, off the bench that'd be that significant. Again, this is assuming that they don't re-sign DeAndre Jordan, they don't re-sign Wes Matthews, and Dirk Nowitzki retires, which are all moves that are like presumed to happen. So that's where I'm going on that. So basically, this one is contingent on DeAndre Jordan going for greener pastures. The next team I have on here is the Los Angeles Clippers, who have a lot of cap space coming up in this offseason. They have Tobias Harris's 15 million coming off the books, Marcin Gortat's 13.5 million. So between those two, you've got 28.5 million. Then you've got Marjanovic coming off the books, Theodosic coming off the books, who combined for 13 million. So right there, you got 41 million. And then Patrick Beverley, Mike Scott, and Mbaa Mute also all coming off the books, so that's another 13 million. So that puts you at like 54 million to play with. So let's say they sign Vucevic for 20. Then if they don't re-sign any of those other guys, which I would assume that they would, maybe try to re-sign Tobias Harris or somebody. But if they don't re-sign any of those other guys, well, I'm gonna assume they re-sign Tobias Harris just because for the sake of this scenario. Then their starting lineup would look something like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander at the point guard, and then probably looking at Avery Bradley at shooting guard, and then Danilo Gallinari, Tobias Harris, and Vucevic as your starting lineup. Again, Vucevic brings good spacing that they don't really have right now with either Marcin Gortat or Boban Marjanovic. Now, Marjanovic can provide some nice defense in that he's 7'6" and has a huge wingspan, but like basically Nikola Vucevic is just a better Marcin Gortat with a 3-point shot as well. So I really like this signing for the Clippers. I think if they did this, you could say that they're like a top 3 contender in the West. I know that seems like a lofty thing, but right now they're like the 5 or the 6 seed. So you add a guy who I think will be an All-Star this year and can give you 20 and 12 on good shooting numbers. I think you can definitely rise up in the West, especially considering that this would be at your weakest position in your starting lineup as is, and it'd be a definite upgrade over either Gortat or Marjanovic. Next team I have on here is the Los Angeles Lakers. So they're going to have quite a bit of cap space this coming off season. They have 21 million coming off the books between KCP and Rajon Rondo, and then you've got another 5 million coming off the books with Lance Stevenson, and then another between Lance Stevenson and Michael Beasley, that's like 8 million coming off the books. So right there, that's 29 million. And then between JaVale McGee and Tyson Chandler coming off the books, that's like 33 million in total. So I think if let's say you sign a guy for like I think that the only way that they would sign Vucevic is if they missed out on Kyrie, Kawhi, all the guys like that. All the really big free agent names that are going around right now. Like, who are some of the other ones besides that? Jimmy Butler, who I think has basically said he didn't want to come to LA because that wasn't on his list of teams. Durant basically said he didn't want to come to LA. So, like maybe DeMarcus Cousins, but I don't think so just because they could have signed him easily this last offseason and didn't. But I think like a good fallback option would be Nikola Vucevic because he's not as well known, but he can still give you really good production, as I've been saying, 20 and 12 on 38% from 3 and 52% from the field. I think that he would be an upgrade over JaVale McGee, even though JaVale McGee has played really well this year. He is 3 years younger than JaVale. He's 8 years younger than Tyson Chandler. I would re-sign Tyson Chandler for like a veteran's minimum, but I would try to get Vucevic in there. And then, they could try and re-sign somebody like Rondo again to like another 10-year deal if they wanted him back, or try to find someone else in free agency. But I'd say he could go to the Lakers as sort of like a backup option type of thing if they can't land another really big free agent. Next team I have on here is the Chicago Bulls, who will be likely not picking up the option on Jabari Parker's $20 million, so they will have $20 million from him cleared up. Robin Lopez's $14 million comes off the books this year, so they'll have a void at center. Now, they do have Wendell Carter Jr., but he can play a bit of power forward too, and you could bring in Vucevic, and I think he'd do pretty well. So your starting lineup, if you brought in Vucevic to this team, would look like, let's see here, Chris Dunn, Zach LaVine, probably... let's see here, small forward. Oof, I don't really know who they would have. I guess Denzel Valentine, and then Markkanen and Vucevic, and then off the bench you could say Wendell Carter and Bobby Portis. Well, actually Bobby Portis is going to be a free agent, so Wendell Carter, let's just say. Or you could do something too where you slide Markkanen to sort of like a a role that Mirotic had for New Orleans last year and a little bit this year, where he's like a really big guy who can shoot threes, but then you slot him in at small forward. They could do something like that with Markkanen, and then you could have Denzel Valentine off the bench, and then have Wendell Carter at power forward and Vucevic at center. Again, Vucevic maybe doesn't fit just because they have a lot of young bigs and they might not want him, especially if they re-sign Bobby Portis. They probably wouldn't bring in Vucevic, but if they don't re-sign him and they're like, we're done rebuilding, we want to contend for that 7 or 8 seed in the East right now, I could see them trying to sign someone like Vucevic. But again, I could see how they wouldn't as well if they wanted to keep tanking and trying to rebuild. Same goes for this next team here, who I have down as the Atlanta Hawks. Basically, I have them only signing Vucevic if they're like, okay, we tanked for 2 seasons, we're done tanking. Now we have 2 high draft picks between Trae Young and whoever they get in this next draft, maybe like Cam Reddish or R.J. Barrett or Zion Williamson. But let's say they have one of those 3 guys. They have Trae Young, and then if they sign Vucevic, they could say, okay, we're ready to contend. I don't know how that front office is thinking, and they're probably kicking themselves because they traded Luka Doncic for Trae Young, but maybe their mindset will be like, we're ready to contend with those 2 high draft picks and Nikola Vucevic. So they could sign him in that case. You're going to have a lot of guys coming off the books, like Jeremy Lin's making nearly $14 million. He's going to be off the books. Dwayne Dedmon's making $7 million. So between those 2, you've got the 20 that I'd say you could sign him with. Besides that, Justin Anderson and Vince Carter add to about $5 million. So then you've got $25 million. So you could definitely sign him. And your starting lineup in that case would probably look something like, okay, let's just assume that they sign, or let's just assume that they get like R.J. Barrett in the draft. Your starting lineup would then look something like Trae Young, R.J. Barrett, Taurean Prince, and then John Collins and Nikola Vucevic. Is that lineup good enough to be an 8 seed in the East? I mean that would be about as good as like what the Nets are right now. I could see them getting to the 8 seed, or if not, maybe the 9 seed. I don't know. Again, this would have to be a scenario in which the Hawks are like, we need to get a lot better really quickly. We need to be a playoff team. So we're going to kind of fast forward the rebuild and sign Vucevic. This one I think is kind of far-fetched, but could end up happening. Do I think it's a great idea for the team necessarily? No, I'd rather see them tank for like 2 more years, but you never know how teams are thinking, especially this front office that traded away Luka Doncic. So this next team is probably the team it's one of the 2 teams that I like the best for Vucevic to go to, in that I think the fit would be the best. And so this team is the Sacramento Kings. They have Zach Randolph coming off the books, Iman Shumpert coming off the books. Those guys added up are about $23 million. They have Kosta Koufos coming off the books, who gets them up to around roughly $32 million. And then you have also Ben McLemore coming off the books, and Willie Cauley-Stein coming off the books. And then let's see here, that gets them up to around $42 million in cap space. And now they could re-sign Willie Cauley-Stein, but the hard thing about him is it's really hard to know what his worth is. He's sort of played essentially so far in the league as like a poor man's Clint Capella / like Andre Drummond type. Like probably his career, like his best seasons, he's going to average like 15 and 12. And he's not going to shoot it outside of the paint. He's going to be like a DeAndre Jordan type. So like, I don't really know what his worth would be on the open market. Probably around 15 million per year. He's a good player, but his play type is so common that I don't really know how much he's worth, or like whether the Kings would really want to re-sign him for that much. What I mean by that is like you've got players like Andre Drummond, DeAndre Jordan, Dwight Howard, Willie Cauley-Stein himself, Clint Capella. Those are just about 5, but there's a lot of examples of guys who can kind of do what he can do, basically just rebound and catch lobs. They could also re-sign DeAndre. They could try and sign someone like DeAndre Jordan, to fill the role that Willie Cauley-Stein has played on the team. But the scenario in which I like Vucevic to go to this team is if they do actually re-sign Cauley-Stein and then they also sign Vucevic. Now that's two centers. You might say, why would they re-sign both of them? But my thinking here is that so a lot of actually more frequently than you would assume this season, they actually when if let's say Bielitsa has been injured or out or unavailable for some reason, they actually have done this starting lineup where they play Willie Cauley-Stein and Kosta Koufos together. If you don't know much about Kosta Koufos, he has no range whatsoever. He can really only score by getting like a rebound and a tip in and stuff like that. He's a very poor NBA player. One of the guys who I just have never understood why he's in the league even. He's just essentially like nothing more than a body. Sort of think of him as like a poor man's Timofey Mozgov. So that's what you can think of with Koufos. And so they played Cauley-Stein a bit at power forward, and it worked okay. But if you bring in Vucevic, you could start him at the 5, Cauley-Stein at the 4. At the 3, you could start Bielitsa, or you could start Bogdanovic. And then at the 2, you'd have Buddy Hield, and at the 1, De'Aaron Fox. And then off the bench, whichever guy between Bogdanovic and Bielitsa you didn't start could come off the bench. Probably Bielitsa coming off the bench. And you'd be looking pretty good if that was like your basic 6 guys. And then beyond what Koufos can do, Vucevic can shoot threes, so that would do some good spacing for the team as well, and that you would clear up some space in the paint for Willie Cauley-Stein to be able to operate down there. But maybe if they re-sign Cauley-Stein, they won't want to re-sign or if they re-sign Cauley-Stein, they might not want to sign Vucevic just because they don't want to sign 2 guys who are like centers, but I think it could be a decent move. Now the best fit I have on here, the team that I think could use him the best, would do the best with him, would be the San Antonio Spurs. Now coincidentally, this is a team that definitely has the least amount of money that they can offer him. They could only offer him around $15 million compared to some of the other teams, and that's if they let Rudy Gay go, who is going to be a free agent this season. Really, unfortunately, is that they're paying Pau Gasol $16 million guaranteed next season, and that just sucks. If he hadn't signed the deal for that additional year, they could so perfectly sign Vucevic and then re-sign Rudy Gay to around the same $10 million. And then you'd have just such a good lineup with those two, bringing in those 2 guys. But because they have Pau Gasol on the roster for $16 million, their options are very limited. So they'd have to let Rudy Gay walk unless he re-signed for a veterans minimum, which I don't think he would. And then they have a few other guys very deep down the roster that they could easily afford to let go. After that, they could sign him for around $15 million. So Vucevic would have to be willing to accept $15 million. But if he was willing to accept that, then you could have a starting lineup that looked like DeJounte Murray at the point, DeMar DeRozan at the 2, or actually probably what the lineup would be: Patty Mills at the 1, DeJounte Murray at the 2, DeMar DeRozan at the 3, Aldridge at the 4, and then Vucevic at the 5 with Pau Gasol coming off the bench. And then you also have like Davis Bertans, Marco Bellinelli coming off the bench, and Lonnie Walker as probably like your main guys. Derek White too, because he's come along a lot this season. So yeah, that would probably be like the main lineup there for the Spurs. So out of all of these, which team would I like to see him go to the most? Probably the Kings. I think that would be a really cool move to see him go there and play with those young guys. And I definitely don't want him to re-sign with the Magic just because they have such a crowded front court, and I think it'd be better to let them see Mo Bamba shine. Because unless you're going to play Aaron Gordon at the small forward, which he really isn't that good at and really is uncomfortable with, then you can't keep him, Bamba, and Vucevic. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.